I park 2 blocks from my parents' house and sit in the car for exactly 4 minutes, counting my breaths the way my therapist taught me before I stopped going. The familiar pressure builds behind my sternum the moment I turn onto their street, like my body remembers what my mind keeps trying to forget. 7 months since the last time I did this to myself. 7 months of peace, and I'm voluntarily walking back into the storm because my mother asked twice and my father didn't call at all, which somehow hurts more. I check my reflection in the visor mirror. Eyeliner sharp, posture steady. The version of me that exists in that house is a ghost I wear like a costume. I pull it on now, smooth it over my shoulders, and get out of the car. The Callaway house on the north side of Chicago smells exactly like it always has, my mother's potpourri, and something roasting in the oven and underneath it all. That particular tension that lives in the walls. Patricia Callaway appears from the kitchen before I've even closed the front door, wiping her hands on a dish towel, her smile doing the careful work of covering everything she doesn't want to say out loud. You made it. She squeezes my arm instead of hugging me properly. Your father's in the living room. Daniel got here 20 minutes ago. Of course he did. Daniel is always exactly on time when being on time earns points. I follow the sound of my father's laughter into the living room. Robert Callaway is sitting in his armchair like a man who's never once doubted his own opinion about anything, which as far as I can tell, he hasn't. My brother is beside him on the couch, still wearing his work clothes at 7 on a Saturday evening, his tie loosened just enough to look effortless. They're mid-conversation when I walk in, and they finish it before acknowledging me. There she is, my father says, nodding in my direction the way you'd nod at someone who's held the elevator for you. Polite, minimal. Daniel turns with that smile I've known my whole life, the one that's never quite reached his eyes when he's looking at me. Hey, Nora. He holds up his glass of bourbon. Mom told you the news? She mentioned something. I settle into the chair across from them, keeping my voice even. Congratulations on the promotion. VP of Client Relations. My father says it slowly, like each word is something he wants to taste. His chest expands visibly. Youngest VP in Hargrove's history. Do you know what that means in that firm? I know exactly what it means. I also know that Daniel has been angling for that title for 3 years, and that 2 people were passed over to give it to him. But I say none of this. My mother appears with a glass of wine for me, and I accept it like a shield. Dinner is my mother's pot roast, which she makes when she wants to signal that this is a significant occasion. The table is set with the good china. Daniel holds court from the head-adjacent seat, talking about the new accounts he'll oversee, the team he'll be managing, the conference in New York in the spring. My father asks follow-up questions the way a journalist would engaged, hungry for more, proud in a way that fills the whole room. And you, Nora? My mother asks it the way she always does, like an afterthought dressed up in politeness. How's the design business? It's going well, I say. Still just freelancing? My father asks, not looking up from his plate. I have a studio. I've had a studio for 4 years. Right. He cuts into his roast. Your little logo thing. Something tightens in my jaw. I keep eating. Design is a tough industry, Daniel says, with the magnanimous tone of someone throwing a bone. Really competitive. You've got to respect anyone who sticks it out. He pauses. Though at some point, you have to ask yourself what the ceiling looks like, right? Freelancers don't exactly build equity. I'm not a freelancer. I'm just saying, if you ever wanted to pivot into something more structured corporate communications, maybe I could probably get you an introduction at Hargrove. Junior level, obviously, but it'd be a real salary, benefits, a career path. He says it like he's doing me a favor. Like it's generous. I look at my brother across the table and think of the moment 4 years ago, when I showed my father my first real contract, $60,000 from a Chicago hospitality brand for a full identity overhaul. I had driven straight from signing it to their house, the paper still warm from the printer, my hands shaking with something that felt like proof. My father had looked at it for 12 seconds. Then he'd handed it back and said, "That's nice, sweetheart. But is it steady?" I had driven home and cried in my parking garage for 20 minutes. Then I had gone upstairs and emailed 3 more proposals. I made a decision that night that I've kept so carefully since. I would never show them anything again until there was nothing left to dismiss. I appreciate the offer, I tell Daniel now, with a smile I've had years to perfect. I'm okay where I am. My father makes a sound that isn't quite a laugh. Okay. He reaches for the bread. Well, when you're ready for something serious, Your brother's offer stands. As if Daniel had said it. As if my father and my brother have merged into a single opinion about what my life should be. I drive home with the radio off. Somewhere around the river, I stop performing calm and let myself feel the actual thing underneath it not hurt anymore. Or not only hurt, something colder. Something that has been quietly building for 4 years of Sunday dinners and follow-up questions I was never really meant to answer. My phone buzzes on the passenger seat. Cal, how bad? He asks when I pick up. He always knows. Daniel made VP. Ah, a beat. And they used the occasion too. He offered to get me a junior position at his firm. I say it flatly. As a favor. Cal is quiet for a moment. When he speaks again, his voice is careful in the way it gets when he's thinking 3 moves ahead. Nora. The Hargrove rebrand RFP dropped today. I stop at a red light. I saw it. Their parent company wants a full identity overhaul. New visual language, campaign system, digital and print. It's a 14-month engagement. He pauses. It's also the account your brother just took over as VP. The light turns green. Pull the full brief. I say, I want to see everything tonight. I can hear him smile through the phone. Already sent it. Sable Studio does not look like what people expect when they hear the word studio. It occupies the top floor of a converted warehouse in the West Loop. All exposed brick and 12-foot ceilings, and the kind of natural light that costs money. 17 people work here now, designers, strategists, a copywriter who used to be at Whedon, a motion director who turned down 3 bigger agencies to join us. We cleared $8 million in revenue last year. Our client list includes 2 Fortune 500 companies, a James Beard-nominated restaurant group, and a luxury hotel brand with properties in 4 countries. My family thinks I make logos on my laptop. Cal is waiting when I arrive. 2 coffees on the table and the Hargrove brief open on the main screen. He's in his usual after-hours mode, jacket off, sleeves rolled, the kind of focus that makes the rest of the world go quiet. He's been my partner since the beginning. Since the version of Sable Studio that existed in a spare bedroom with a second-hand monitor and more ambition than sense. He believed in it before anyone else did. Which I've never said out loud to him and probably should. 14-month engagement, minimum, he says when I sit down. Estimated contract value, conservative projection, around $2.8 million. I wrap both hands around my coffee. And the submission? Blind pitch process. They're not revealing agency names to the evaluation committee until final presentations. Everything goes through their procurement portal under a project code. He looks at me steadily. Your brother won't know who's pitching until the finalist meeting. I hold his gaze. Let's submit under Meridian. It's one of our subsidiary LLCs, named before I knew it would ever matter for something like this. Full credentials, full portfolio, but my name stays off the initial paperwork. Cal tilts his head slightly. You're sure? I want them to choose us because we're the best option. I pause. And then I want Daniel to walk into that room. Cal picks up his coffee. There's something in the way he's looking at me, not quite approval, not quite concern. Something that sits between them like a hand extended over a careful distance. All right, he says quietly. Then let's make something they can't say no to. We work until 2 in the morning. I drive home through empty streets and sleep 4 hours and wake up already thinking about the proposal. The next 6 weeks are the best kind of busy, the kind where the work is so consuming that there's no space for anything else to take up residence in your head. Our team builds a brand strategy document that I'm genuinely proud of, the kind of work that says something real about who a company is and who it could be. The visual language we propose for Hargrove is clean and confident, and nothing like what they currently have, which is exactly the point. We submit through the portal on a Wednesday morning and I close my laptop and go get lunch and try not to think about it. 3 weeks later, the call comes. Meridian Creative has been shortlisted to 3 finalists. Final presentations are scheduled at Hargrove's Chicago headquarters. I tell Cal over the phone, and he says nothing for a moment, and then says, "Dinner tonight. We're celebrating that much at least." I say yes before I think about what his voice sounded like when he said it. We go to a small Italian place near the studio that we've been to 100 times, and something is different in the way we sit across from each other, or maybe it's not different at all and I'm only now paying attention. He orders wine and talks about the presentation strategy, and at some point the conversation drifts away from work entirely and we stay at the table 2 hours longer than we planned. Walking back, he says something that makes me laugh, and I look up and find him already watching me. Neither of us says anything about it. But I think about it later, lying in the dark. There's a moment, 9 days before the Hargrove presentation, when I almost stop everything. I'm at my desk on a Thursday afternoon, when my phone shows my mother's name, and I answer it without thinking. And she sounds tired in a way she doesn't usually allow herself to sound. She's been having headaches, she says. Nothing serious, the doctor says stress. Your father's knee is bothering him again. It would be nice to see you, Nora. You've been so busy. She says it without reproach, which is somehow worse than if she'd said it with some. I hang up and sit with it for a long time. The thought moves through me slowly, unwelcome. What if I've spent so long protecting myself from them that I've built something that looks like a wall from both sides? What if, when this is all over, I've won something I can't actually hold? I call Cal. I keep thinking, I say, without preamble, about whether any of this matters. He doesn't pretend not to understand what I mean. It matters, he says. Not because of them, because of you. Because you've spent years making yourself smaller in their presence, and you don't have to anymore. What if showing them doesn't change anything? It probably won't change them, he says honestly. But it'll change what you're willing to carry. A pause. And after the presentation, whatever you decide to do with the relationship, that'll be your choice. Made from a different position. I'm quiet for a moment. That's very wise for someone who still has his Netflix password set to his college roommate's account. He laughs, and the tension breaks, and I go back to preparing the presentation. The Hargrove Financial Group occupies 14 floors of a building on Wacker. I know this because I've stood on the sidewalk outside it twice in the past week, not going in, just letting the reality of it become familiar. On the morning of the presentation, I wear a charcoal suit I bought for our first major pitch 2 years ago, back when buying it felt reckless and necessary at the same time. Cal meets me in the lobby looking like he slept 8 hours, which I know he didn't. Ready? He asks. Yes, I say, which is true. We're shown to a conference room on the 11th floor by an assistant who offers us water and tells us the evaluation committee will be in shortly. The room has floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river. I stand at them while Cal sets up the presentation, watching the water move below. The door opens. 4 people enter: procurement director, creative director, head of marketing, and my brother. Daniel is mid-sentence when he sees me, something about the Q4 calendar, and the sentence simply stops. The room doesn't notice yet, doesn't see the thing that just happened in his face, the way the confidence fell out of it for exactly 2 seconds before his features reassembled into something professional. He sits down, he looks at the table, he looks back up at me. I let him look. I don't rush it. Good morning, I say, addressing the room. I'm Nora Calloway, founder and creative director of Sable Studio. You may have received our materials under the Meridian Creative Portfolio. Meridian is one of our operating subsidiaries. Everything you've seen was built by our core team. I gesture to Cal beside me. This is Cal Merritt, our Chief Operating Officer. We're glad to be here. The procurement director nods and invites us to begin. Daniel has not said anything. His hands are flat on the table. We present for 40 minutes. I've done this enough times now that I can be present in the room, while also watching it from a slight distance, reading the signals where people lean forward, when they make notes, when someone's expression shifts from polite attention to actual interest. The creative director starts making notes at slide 12. The head of marketing asks a question that tells me she's already thinking about implementation. The procurement director says almost nothing, which I've learned means she's paying the most attention of all. Daniel says nothing through any of it. He watches the slides. Once, he watches me instead of the slides, and I hold his gaze for just a moment before returning my attention to the room. When we finish, there are several minutes of questions. Good questions, the kind that mean they're serious. I answer each one directly, and when I don't know something precisely, I say so and tell them how we'd find out, which I've learned is always better than pretending. The evaluation committee thanks us, and we're told they'll be in touch within 2 weeks. We shake hands around the table, and when I reach Daniel, he takes my hand and says, Nora, and I say, Daniel, and I move on. In the elevator down, Cal stands beside me in silence until the doors close. Then he exhales slowly. That, he says, was something. Did we do enough? We did the work, he says. That's always enough. I look at the floor numbers descending. He's going to call my father tonight. Probably. And my father is going to tell him I've been playing at something that was never real. I pause. And Daniel is going to have to decide whether to defend that story or let it fall apart. Cal looks at me sideways. Is that what you're hoping for? I think about it honestly. I'm hoping to stop being their punchline, I say. I'm hoping the next time my father makes that sound, that particular sound he makes when he's being generous about something he finds small, I want it to be about something else. Not me. The lobby opens around us, glass and marble and the sound of the city outside. For what it's worth, Cal says. Quiet enough that it's clearly not for anyone else. Nothing about what you've built has ever been small. I don't look at him. If I look at him, I'll say something that doesn't fit in an elevator lobby on a Wednesday morning. Let's go back to work, I say instead. But I'm smiling when I say it, and so is he. Sable Studio wins the Hargrove account 8 days later. The contract comes through Meridian, as agreed. And then 2 days after that, the Hargrove head of marketing sends a separate note addressed to me by name, saying she looked up our full portfolio after the presentation and wants to discuss a longer-term partnership across their brand, family. I forward it to Cal with no message. He responds with a single punctuation mark, a period, which is his version of a standing ovation. My father calls me that Friday evening. He doesn't usually call. My mother is the one who calls. I look at his name on the screen for a long moment and then I answer, Nora. His voice is strange, flattened from its usual register. Daniel told me about Hargrove. Did he? He said your firm won a major contract. With his company. A pause. He said it was competitive. It was. He mentioned a figure. Another pause. Longer. Is that number accurate? I don't discuss specific contract values, but the engagement is significant. Yes. My father is quiet in a way I've never quite heard from him. You've been building this for a while, he says. And it isn't a question. 4 years. You should have told us. There's something in his voice that might be defensiveness, or might be the beginning of something else, something that hasn't found its shape yet. I'm very careful with my next words. I showed you the first contract, Dad. Do you remember what you said? He doesn't answer immediately. When he does, it's not an answer. Your mother and I would like to have dinner, this weekend, if you're free. I'll think about it, I say. I'll let you know. I end the call and sit with the phone in my lap for a minute. The feeling in my chest isn't the triumph I thought it would be. It isn't satisfaction in the sharp, clean sense of the word. It's something quieter and more complicated. The feeling of a door that you've been pressing against for years finally giving way, and the room beyond it being not what you imagined but real, full of ordinary light. Daniel calls 20 minutes later. I don't pick up. The following Sunday, I tell Cal about the call from my father over coffee at the studio, the two of us sitting on the window bench with the weekend city below us, unhurried. Are you going to go? He asks. I don't know yet. I pull my knees up. I know I don't owe them an explanation. I know I don't owe them access to this. I gesture vaguely, meaning the studio, the work, the life I built in the space their dismissal left. But I also know that not going is still making a choice about them, and I'm not sure I want them to have that much space in my decisions anymore. Cal turns his coffee cup in both hands. What do you want? Not in relation to them. Just what do you actually want? I think about it seriously, which I haven't let myself do. I want to have dinner with people who see me, I say. I want to stop spending energy on the performance of being less than I am. I pause. I want to build something that lasts longer than this conversation I've been having with my family since I was 22. He nods slowly. So go to dinner if it serves you. Don't go if it doesn't. He meets my eyes. You've earned the right to make that call entirely on your own terms. I look at him, really look, for a moment that stretches past what either of us would call professional. Cal. Yeah. Thank you. For 4 years of this. Something in his expression shifts, carefully, like a window opening by a fraction. It's the best 4 years of my career, a beat, and the rest of it. I let that sit between us. Outside, Chicago moves below, indifferent and brilliant. The studio is quiet in the way it gets on weekends when the team is out and the space is fully ours, and I think about all the Sundays I've spent in this building instead of in my parents' dining room, and how much of what I am exists because of exactly that exchange. I don't go to my parents' dinner that week. I send my mother a short message. I need more time. She writes back one word. Okay. I look at it longer than I expected to. 3 weeks later, I'm in the studio at 7 in the evening, reviewing the first round of Hargrove assets with our creative director, when my phone shows my mother calling. I don't silence it immediately. I look at her name for the length of 3 full rings. I think about her face at the dinner table, her eyes, the careful way she's always navigated the space between my father and whatever the truth is. I think about freedom and what it actually costs. I set the phone face down on my desk. Let's look at the typography again, I tell my creative director. The secondary weight isn't quite right. We work for another hour. When I check my phone again, there's a voicemail. I don't listen to it tonight. What I know is this. Sable Studio will have a record year. The Hargrove partnership is the beginning of something larger. And Cal and I both know it. And the knowing sits between us now like a plan we haven't finished making yet. My brother is VP at a company that is now, in a significant and contractual sense, my client. My father made a sound on the phone that I have never heard from him before. Something that might have been the first draft of respect, or might have been the first crack in a story he'd been telling about me for a decade. I can't control what any of them do with the information that I exist. I never could. But I run a company that 8 people built with me from nothing, and the work we do is real. And when I stand in my own conference room or my own studio or in front of my own window watching my own city, I don't need to measure it against anyone else's idea of what serious looks like. That turned out to be the thing I was building toward all along, not the contract, not the look on my brother's face when I walked into that room, not the call from my father that finally sounded different. Just this, knowing, without having to prove it to anyone, exactly what I am. It feels nothing like revenge. It feels like finally breathing at the right depth. It feels like mine.